With Army of the Dead, there's a real sense, obviously, of Zack Snyder's fingerprints all over this film, because obviously he wrote it, he directed it, he's a cinematographer. There doesn't seem to be like an element he hasn't had in like major involvement with. Did that involvement stretch into the visual effects as well? To what extent would you say?
No, of course. I mean, look, Zach's he's kind of incredible. We were joking early on when we were having these meetings, and you know, we'd have these what it's called, a storyboard meeting or a story meeting or whatever, and he'd come in. Yeah. And we were joking that we got to get you a hat that has little patches on the back so we know who we're talking to. Are we talking to the DP? Are we talking to the director? Are we talking to the storyboard artist? I mean, he has all these credits in the front end, and then there's unseen credits that he has too. I mean, he's a storyboard artist, you know, like, so he touches everything he can. And I jokingly said one day to him, I was like, you can do all of this. You're one person, but you can do all of this. And like, when are you going to take my job too? You know? Yeah. But he's respective of the process too. He's respective of the craft. I mean, he brings around really great people that really care about what they do. And with having such a great leader like him, you want to work harder, you want to do better, you want to give him everything that you can. So of course he got involved in the process, but I will say, like, there was a level of trust that he had. You know, obviously hiring me, and as our conversations grew and as our relationship grew, he felt a lot of that fell on me, and he trusted the process, which was great. You know, like, that's exactly what you want in a leader. It's like, you do your thing, and then when you feel it's ready, bring it back to me. So once we kind of established that dialogue, both through shooting and in post, it was just such a fluid process, you know. So you kind of got to, in some ways, you have to get in the head of the director, right, and understand what they're looking for. So tonally, once we established that in our edit, and once we kind of knew, you know, where we wanted to go with the gore, we had a lot of discussions about the look of Vegas, look of Valentine and stuff like that. But once we kind of had an agreement, you know, we executed it all the way through, and it felt like there wasn't many changes, which is such a pleasant experience, because, you know, what I kind of always tell my team is, like, we have to be efficient with capture, we have to be efficient with post, because once you get kind of all that crap out, then you can really focus on the creative, and that's where is most important, and like, what's the storytelling that we're trying to show here, right? So luckily with this one, it was just it clicked all the way through.
When it came to realizing, obviously, Las Vegas in ruins, what were the defining factors that influenced your creative choices in the beginning?
Well, I mean, with the script, the early script had a bunch of different pieces of Vegas. So it was literally my first meeting once I was hired. I brought in this huge poster board, and I made a microfiche, so there was like multiple layers to it. So I like would walk through it and say, okay, here's the Vegas map, and then here's where, you know, scene 22 takes place, and then I'd flip it over and then you see 22, and then I visually wanted to show everybody, like, this is the expanse in which we're building. So for early on, we had a lot of discussions about, okay, we don't have an unlimited budget, we have to be creative in what we build. Can we take this scene, that's the only scene that takes place, you know, in the in this northern intersection, can we move that and all those beats into like our hero intersection? And that's actually what we did. So a lot of the movie takes place in the Tropicana intersection, and it was just about being strategic and being smart and saying, like, let's put all the resources towards this intersection and make it absolutely beautiful, and start it early so we know what it is, and then we know that all these other beats take place here and here, and just kind of plotting out Vegas, both with our practical builds and our digital support, and then also plotting out where our fictitious buildings was super important, because by the time we were shooting in Atlantic City towards the end of the shoot, we'd walk into Atlantic City and we'd be at a crosswalk or intersection and say, oh yeah, right, this way you're at the Bly, but over there's the Flamingo, without even seeing anything. We're pointing towards the ocean and going, remember, over there's the Flamingo, and that's north. You know, like, again, Zach and I had that that bond where we could see it in our mind. And you know, sometimes the other crew is like, what are you talking about over there? And it's like, don't worry, you'll see it in the final picture, you know. But it just that was really important. It was really important to understand the world, and like from my aspect, to understand where we were in our digital world, but also in our practical Vegas. And then, you know, we knew going in, we wanted to make Vegas look as real as possible and capture as much, you know, of the real world at the time as possible, because we could have gone the other route and just said, okay, let's just kind of make up our Vegas, right? But we wanted it to feel as if you were dropped into Vegas after 5 or 6 years of destruction. So I hope I answered your question. I kind of skewed a little bit there.
I think you covered it massively. Big umbrella.
Oh, good.
Thank you. I was going to say, obviously, you've worked with a lot of other, what I would term as, shall we say, visionary directors, very strong directors. You've worked with David Ayer, you've extensively, and you've obviously had some time with James Gunn as well on Guardians of the Galaxy. How do you think visual effects benefit from having such a strong vision at the helm, irrespective of the project?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's good is that a lot of these directors are like early on, you know, there were well, we don't have to talk about the whole, you know, run of visual effects and the history of it, but I think more and more directors are coming around to understand, like, we're not there to hurt the production, we're there to support it. And like working with these visual directors really helps, because they understand that, right? So especially with Zach, this one along the way, like there were we were in a more compressed schedule. So our production designer would say, well, I can give you this, this, and this, but I can't give you that. So then him and we would all kind of powwow around what was at the time like a foam core, and we'd come up with like very simple solutions, you know, because like you can make it overly complicated, but we'd say, okay, the simple solution is, let's take this one practical piece that we're building, and instead we can, in our world, and again, this kind of helps with a visual director, because I could go, Zach, well, what if we flip this around? We're filming the same exact intersection that we build, but we can flip flop it in the world. So it feels like we're in a different intersection. And that's actually what we did with the Over Zeus. Like we just kind of flip flopped and did some digital set dressing from our Tropicana intersection, removed our MGM sign digitally. So it felt like they were in another piece of Vegas. And it's just like that, working with the visual directors that can understand that without me having to like draw it out all the time really helps. And Zach got that. Like as soon as you can show the world and you can kind of have an understanding of it and just plot it out on a piece of paper, very analog, you know, it really helps.
I was going to say, you've mentioned the production designer, and this film seems very, the visual effects are very integral to both the look and the feel of the film, I think. How collaborative was the process with, it's Julie, is it Berghoff?
Yeah, it's Julie Berghoff, yeah.
So how collaborative was that?
Yeah, we were collaborating all the time with a lot of, again, like I said, like a lot of the sets, the specific sets, the majority of them, they were all a collaborative effort, but the ones that we focused more attention on was the Henderson camp, and obviously Tropicana, Las Vegas kind of beats in there. So the Henderson camp was interesting because we, in early conversations, I think Zach even has spoken about this since, is like, we were trying to figure out what, and this was, I think, even before Julie came on, him and I were talking, in our AD, Misha, we're discussing like what the wall is, right? Is it concrete or like, and then like the idea behind it was that they have to rapidly build this thing. So we were all, what if it was shipping containers and how high those shipping containers would be? And then also, if we built those shipping containers X high, we could be strategic about when we're down there, we don't actually have to ever see Vegas because we're below the container wall, right? So we don't have to spend that money in the visual effects, and then we can be really strategic when we, you know, in the movie now, as you've seen, when we drive over that wall and do the big reveal. So a lot of those conversations ended up being our scope and scale, is what we called them, of like, we want to really sell, we want to bring the audience into that big scope and scale moment. And then we're just crashing down right into the meat of the story, right? The story beats, the character beats, and we're in it with the characters. And then as soon as you like are invested, we just crash out again and show the wide expanse of Vegas. We're like, oh yeah, right, we're in Vegas still, right? It's almost a trickery in some ways. Not, I don't want to say call it trickery, but it's almost, I liken it like the filmmaking 101, like sell it in your wides and then you're in your tight end story beats. So, you know, Julie went a little bit on a tangent, but you know, Henderson was one because we could only build a certain portion of the wall. And then what we tried to do is when we go inside, it's just, again, like just rethinking it a bit, where we knew it was about a quarter mile to get to the Tropicana intersection, but we only had a small piece of set. So we were strategic about, well, let's just redress the set and we'll have the characters walk, cut, and they'll walk in the same set, but it'll just be slightly redressed and we can get away with that. And yeah, maybe visual effects does some enhancement, but it was those little conversations like that that really, we maximized our practical sets. Like we shot all over them, but so much so that we really didn't leave anything on the cutting room floor. And then where we needed to help with the visual effects, we did the best we can. But it was also just little things like, okay, if we're in Tropicana, we know the MGM's over there, but it would really be nice to have both a practical piece of the MGM sign to tie into that, right? So let's do that. And that's what we had there. There's like a little sign that's all bent up and it's actually the MGM sign. And then in our digital world, we removed the M. So it made sense that the M's on the ground and the M's gone in our digital world. So it just kind of, it's the small details that make it really quite seamless.
I was gonna ask you a question, which is more specific about the zombies themselves and about the visual effects behind the zombies. How important was it to illustrate a hierarchy or a class structure through the effects work? Because it's apparent, but obviously it's a question worth asking.
Yeah, I mean, so what was great was that Damon Caro, the second unit director and also the stunt coordinator, early on, we knew that we'd have to like separate those, and even Justin Raleigh, our makeup effects, like we knew we were in the story, there was always going to be a separation of them, and like visually we had to separate that, and also in movement. So he did a lot of character stunt performance and study, right, to get us to the point where understanding that shamblers would over time get more rigid, right, and like have this like the classic zombie, but then really spent a lot of time with the alphas and like how they moved, and really kind of keyed into also the stunt performers themselves, how they had like great, you know, parkour experience, and just like they were super fast. That combined with speed, parkour, and just that like spectacle, if you will, was really a nice contrast to like the slow shamblers. So then just taking that piece, now that they had kind of done the studies, and we had video reference of that, and they picked out the best performers for those shamblers and alphas. We could then take that and capture that material. We used accent suits, so there's a combination in the movie of motion capture. There's also from motion capture library. There's also a combination of keyframe for some of the big alpha scenes. But I think we really executed that well, where it's like it's pretty seamless, and you can kind of see the divide between the shamblers and alphas, and you almost, in some ways, you get numb of like the headshots to the shamblers, but as soon as the alphas come in, you like you dial it up like 17 notches, and you're like, you know, it gets really exciting. So I kind of hope I answered your question. I don't know if I did it entirely.
I think you did again, which is, as I said, blinding stuff. I was going to ask you, in terms of job satisfaction, which is more challenging to you? Is it the literal world building, or would it be, I don't know, bringing a zombie tiger to life?
I think for this one, it's a combination of both. The world building, the Vegas build was a huge challenge and a huge undertaking, and I'm so happy with how it came out. But there's a level of, and this kind of this branches off to what you were asking me about earlier. There's a level of fun to discover a zombie tiger character, specifically Valentine, right? And also like that backstory, right, that actually we don't really dive into, but from our standpoint, like we want to understand this character so we can bring it to life. So we had a lot of discussions about what that character was, where it came from, who, you know, and even like it's an alpha. Valentine was bit by Zeus in like this wrestling match. And we went so far as to even have there's a little bite mark on Valentine's shoulder that no one's picked up on yet. There's like little Easter eggs like that. And then we talked about what that wrestling match was. Like we go on tangents, and I'm sure my visual effects producer was like, just stop talking about this. But Zach and I would be like, okay, well, where's Valentine come from? And like, what was this wrestling match? And then we'd like visually start to riff off each other and say, oh yeah, like this is this. And everyone's like looking around like, are they? Because we're never going to show that, but we really wanted to understand what the character was. And I think because we took that time to kind of create the backstory there in our minds, and then share that with the facilities doing the work, Frame Store Montreal, and just like to have that understanding, and then also the real life you know, footage that we shot, in addition to like some clips that we'd look at, and just kind of keying into some moments of the feline bit of Valentine was like super satisfying. So I'd say, even though technically I'm really proud of the Vegas build, but like from a purely exciting, fun, enjoyable standpoint, Valentine was like the most fun I've ever had with a character.
I'm going to ask you a question, which it's a bit of a trick question, but I ask all the visual effects interviews I do, I ask the same question. So if you had all the time in the world, but no money, or you know what's coming, a bottomless budget and no time, which one are you picking and why?
I think I'd go with wait, say them one more time, because I was playing in my mind what that would
you
be.
have all the money in the world but no time, or you have all the time in the world and no money. Which do you pick?
I go all the time in the world.
And why?
I think you can. I know how this sounds, and I hope that you'll edit it in a way that's not. It doesn't sound like this, but as like an artist, right? As artists, you're never done with your work, right?
Yeah, sure.
So what was great about this is that we actually did get more time. So as much of the CBBs are like they weren't quite there yet, we had more time to finesse those shots, which I was like never happens for us, right? It's like once you're finished, you're finished.
Yeah, sure.
But even gaining that extra time when we replaced Chris with Tig, gaining that extra time to do that extra work, even at the end of it, I'm always like, there's always more that you want to do. So I think the limited time, I think we could make it work with the time frame. I think strategically we can make it work versus the unlimited money. There's a point in which the two cross, and it's tricky, but I'd say more time.
Okay. Thank you. There is no right answer.
No, I know.
And it's just subjective, and it's just personal.
That's a great question.
Which I love. And I asked, who did I ask? I asked somebody, an ILM visual effects guy. Oh God, Marshall. Marshall Crasser.
Yeah.
And he was great. But yeah. Anyway. I'm digressing, and I won't tell you his answer either. So, last question.
Yes.
Completely off topic.
Yeah.
Can you describe for me your perfect Sunday afternoon?
Oh my gosh. You know, I'd have to say right now, it's we have this little spot in Leo Carrillo the kids really like to go to. So I'd say it's the family, so my wife and my two kids jumping in the car. We're gonna get some breakfast burritos on the way out. We're gonna eat those on the way there. It's about an hour drive from where we are. Have some nice coffees. We've already packed our picnic lunch, and we have our picnic blankets, and we have all the beach toys. And we get there, and the kids just to get to frolic, run around. There's little tide pools that they love to play with. There's usually a point in which the tide goes out where you can actually go around the cove. But if you don't make it back in time, you know, you gotta navigate the deep waters. So we're spending all day there. We're having our picnics. We're playing in the sand. No worries in the world, and actually no phone calls about work in the world. So, and then at the end of that day, I think we grabbed some seafood from a place nearby there, and then we head home, and the kids fall asleep in the car.
See, that's again, it's just it's a lovely question, and it doesn't mean you have to talk about work. Marcus, this has been an absolute pleasure.
Yes.
The film, I've seen the film. The work is exceptional. Visual effects are exceptional, and the film as a whole is really good, I have to say.